I'm Mark Ryan, class of '85. Played center, even though now I look like a prop.
I'm Pat O'Keefe, graduated in 1984, played 3 years, sophomore, junior, and senior year, as a second row, and in junior year as a treasurer of the club and president in senior year.
Well, for me, I always wanted to play, even though I played football in high school. My brother played for Brown when he was going through his college career, and I always felt rugby was something I wanted to try, and I had an opportunity to come right out my freshman year, and everybody was welcoming, and it was really good right from the start.
I had never heard about rugby until I came to Fairfield, and quite honestly, I didn't even hear about rugby after I got to Fairfield. Mark and I lived on Loyola 3 freshman year, and he was a player then. I didn't play freshman year at all, but toward the end of freshman year, spring semester, he invited me to come up to Danbury. Fairfield U was playing the Danbury Men's Club, and a couple of girls from Loyola and myself went up to watch Mark and the rest of the guys, and at that game, I really thought it was kind of interesting. It kind of harkened back to grammar school years playing Kill the Carrier to some degree, and just thought it was an interesting kind of a game. And Mark threw out the invitation, hey, why don't you come out? And following year, sophomore year, I started and just took to it like a duck to water. I thought it was the best game ever invented, best game I've ever played, and all these many years later, it holds fantastic memories for me. In my senior year, 1984, I was the president of the club, and it was a great experience. Rugby in and of itself is a fantastic game. A lot of brotherhood and camaraderie, great athleticism and effort required. But the thing that was interesting to me, coming out of grammar school and high school sports that were always fairly well set up, coaches and all sorts of rules and regulations, and very little in the way of decision making on the part of the players. Fairfield Rugby was unique. The first practice I went to, I can remember Mike McElduff, who was the scrum captain at the time, taking me aside and saying, okay, I'm going to give you a 5-minute primer on rugby, and he was true to his word. He gave me 5 minutes of insight and said, okay, let's go to practice. And the same was true with the backs. We generally were split up for most of the practice sessions. We tried to learn our craft. They were trying to do their thing. But the same was also true of the organization of the club. It was the players themselves, who put together the match schedule. It was the players who oversaw the finances of the group and arranged for all of the payments for buses and for other kind of expenses that we'd come across. And it was also the players who ran the club and make sure that the traditions of the club were successfully passed down. So that was a unique experience, and one again that to this day I cherish as one of the happiest times of my life. I figured we were up at 85% wins, and Mark was saying that I was being just a trifle optimistic, but we certainly won more than we lost. There's no doubt about that, and I'm sticking to 80 to 85%.
Yeah, I would say that was a reach, but we definitely won more than we lost. And even though we didn't beat Columbia the time I was at school, we beat them at the after party. For me, what I liked about it was at our time, there wasn't a set coaching structure. It was all policed by ourselves. But with that being said, it didn't run amok. And if you were diligent and if you made practice and if you gave a good effort, you had an opportunity or a shot at playing A side. And look, we were all athletes and we wanted to win. So yes, winning and taking it seriously was definitely true for me.
The selection committee was a standing committee of the president and the scrum and the back captain. And then generally there were a couple of invites, I guess.
There was at least one scrummer and one back, in addition to the officers that were on the selections.
Were picked out from the rest of the players, and those additional folks who were picked were not necessarily going to be playing A side that particular week or perhaps ever, but it was a pretty democratic structure. It was generally held on Thursday nights. In our senior year, I lived in the townhouses, and that's where we were every Thursday night, fall and spring. And of course, PID, our moderator, was always a welcome member, and I would say he probably attended about 3/4 of the.
Yeah, I would say he was in and out through most of the selections.
Yeah.
But what I liked about selections was, and as a freshman, I was walking down to the field, and I had no idea what team I was playing on, and then somebody had informed me that I was playing A's, and I was in shock. Here I am, a freshman, and I had an opportunity already presented to me to play A side, and that's what I liked about it, was that there was no set clique, or the higher ups had their men, everybody slotted in. So it was refreshing to see that there was no significant harassment or initiation. And it was, if you had the opportunity to go to practice, if you had the ability and you attended, you really had a shot at playing A's, which was great. And I really liked it. And I thought the selection process, even though we did have a good time at it, was very fair, and they took into account attendance, ability, and attitude. It was good. I liked it.
Yeah, I actually had PID for history freshman year, and again, that was before I started playing on the team. So I got to know him, first of all, as a professor. And I thought he was great. I thought he really had a great command of the subject matter. I thought he had a real casual but informative style of teaching. Good sense of humor always. And I got to know him through academics first. I do remember actually being down at one of the practices on Grauert Field early in sophomore year, just after I had started playing for the team. And he came over, and again, we had known each other at least a year, and he came over, shook my hand, and introduced himself and said, "Hi, I'm PID." So a little bit different than Professor Davis in the classroom, and I think that was one of the things that people did like about him, was he was very approachable. Certainly as a mentor for us on the rugby team, as our moderator. He was a good guy, always accessible, willing to talk to you about anything, and he shared his passions. He certainly shared his passion for learning, for history. He also shared, I guess, his passion and interest in having a good time, especially on Friday and Saturday nights. But I think the other thing, though, that he brought was a sense of history outside of the textbooks. When he talked about selections and the whole idea of aptitude, attitude, and attendance, he reminded us of that and the importance of that. He said, that in his view, there are occasions in life where people are allowed to rise to the highest levels, not because of anything they did, not because of anything that they contributed, but because of some, I don't know, what am I trying to say? Some condition in life, birthright, etc., and how that, as a general rule, led the world into a number of situations which were not beneficial. So the idea of hard work, the idea of participation, the idea of being there all the time and trying your best was something that he communicated to us over and over. And certainly, as one of his prime examples, he would remind us of the sacrifice that other people had done outside of rugby. As an example, Hans Grauert, who the field is named after. We were, I guess, we kind of brought up on stories of Hans and his dedication to our country. Also the way the family had responded, to his tragic death.
I mean, he was such an academic, elite mind, but at the same time, he did allow us to have our tomfoolery and good time. But there was a place for that, and then there was a place for being serious. And believe me, he did not take into account that you were a rugby player if you were in his class. If you were in his class, you either cut the mustard or you didn't. Being a rugger or not. If I could, just to mention this one story about Pid, I mean, I did admire him, and I did appreciate everything that he brought to the table with regards to being the moderator of Fairfield Rugby. So much so that when he was in his last days at hospice, we did make a point of seeing him quite regularly. And I was joking with him that, I said, I studied all night with this fella, John Pearson, and I know I wrote the same answers that he wrote. And he got an A, and I got a C. So Pid looked at me while he was laying in his bed, and word after breath, not changing your grade. It really was, it was nice for him to make light of it, and in considering the position he was in. So I will always look back very fondly that I had an opportunity to play rugby for Fairfield, but to play rugby for Paul Davis. Yeah, well, for me, I mean, the one who took me under his wing was Chris Moore, Honcho, my freshman year, fall season. He was the scrum captain, and never once did I feel intimidated or that I had to go through some initiation rite. They welcomed you with open arms. If you came in with the attitude they were looking for and pitched in, you were welcomed. It was simple as that. I just took to it like a duck to water. And all of the upperclassmen, Dennis Halen, Pat McKeon, Mike Crowley, Chris Moore, as I mentioned, Mike McElduff, all of these fellas, they're just, were the guys that we, they say you stand upon the shoulders of giants that have come before you. And that, it was just great. There was none of this, hazing or that kind of goings on for the underclassmen, and I liked it.
Well, how would you describe your personality in the couple of years that spanned your time there?
How about free-spirited?
Well,
I'll go with that one.
Yeah. I mean, you always felt that we were blackballed because of the off-field antics that we allowed ourselves to get into socially. If we took a party too far, or if we did things we weren't supposed to, you always felt it was us against them, and just even trying to get funding, and trying to prove to the administration that we're a proper entity versus hooligans.
We had some wonderful weekends at Fairfield where you'd have just great weather, whether it be the fall or the spring.
The hill was packed.
The hill, from the tennis court down was packed. The wall along North Benson Road At that time, of course, that was the early 80s. Drinking age on campus was still 18. So we would occasionally have, kegs at the field as well. And it made for a very sociable, very enjoyable afternoon for everybody. And, at that point we had at least 3 full sides. Occasionally we would have a D team play. And, it made for a long, enjoyable, but very, very pleasant afternoon for the fans, the supporters, and the players alike.
Oh yeah, well, I think I'm looking at it with rose-colored glasses, but I think the community and Fairfield in general appreciated and loved the rugby players.
Yeah.
I didn't think of anything else.
Yeah, no, in general, I thought, although we did have a reputation for not necessarily following the letter of the law, there was an appreciation for the camaraderie that Fairfield Rugby exhibited. Again, it didn't matter if you were a freshman or a sophomore or a junior or a senior. If you were on the rugby team, you were a rugger, and it was just as simple as that. And no matter where you were or what the situation was, if there were other people on the rugby team, then you were at home. And I think people, could see that, could see it being demonstrated and really could appreciate it. And I think probably to some degree there was, a bit of desire or perhaps even envy of being able to participate in something that was so all-inclusive. Again, not only during the games and the practice, but always. It was spring of '82. The rugby club went to Bermuda during our spring break. I guess we had about 11 or 12 fellas who made the trip, and we had scheduled games against the local team there in Bermuda.
And Babson, who we never played.
Yeah, Babson, who we never played. But we had a fantastic trip. It was a great opportunity for us to get to know a smaller subset of the fellas a little bit more deeply. There was one fella actually who made the trip, Joe Grauziano, who passed away shortly after we graduated from Fairfield, and to this day I consider that to be a wonderful opportunity to meet a fella and to get to know him. Joe was a great guy, and,
Yep.
and that was one of the highlights of the trip. But there was a lot of fun. We also, in our senior year, went to the Bahamas. Bill Lynch, who was the fellow who set the trip up, was very gung-ho, and I guess we were kind of surprised when we got there that in the course of the week he had set up 4 games. And so that became a fairly demanding week of rugby. A lot of hard hitting and a lot of excitement, a lot of very, very long nights, early mornings and the like, but it was great fun. It truly was. And I still actually have a plaque that the Bahamas Buccaneers team gave to us after our game. I'm not sure if they gave it to us for our antics on the field or afterwards at the party, but it was a good time.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, for me, I don't know about historic reference to the club, but for me, our sophomore year we go to Bermuda, and then I goof up academically and still on campus, go to the Bahamas, and then the year after that we go to New Orleans for a tournament during Mardi Gras. And in my own progression, the satisfaction of going to Bermuda, you're not thinking about anything really, just in having a good time. And then by the time you're an older senior player, you are concerned about the team's well-being. You're worried about who's going to make it. Let's make sure that nobody gets hurt. Let's make sure nobody gets arrested. Let's make sure we all get home. and it was just a great team to be a part of and to have those memories for me. It's nothing like it. You know, it's kind of like being in a family. You know, you can hit your brother, but if somebody outside the family came at your brother, you're going to jump at them 10 times more. And it's the same thing when you were playing, and whether or not you were out socially, whether it was a home game or an away game or a trip into another country. You were always, okay, who's here, who's there? When we were in the Bahamas, somebody walked off with my rugby jacket, and 4 of my fellow teammates made sure that my jacket didn't leave without me. I mean, countless times just making sure that, okay, who's out to what time, where are they, who's safe, who's not safe, where are they? You know, I mean, I couldn't think anything but that you had your fellow teammates back on and off the field. Well, I think sometimes the administration probably wished the rugby team went away for our antics off the field.
But that, I think, it helped make us stronger.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It was an opportunity to really concentrate on who we were, knowing that we weren't much loved by anybody else, perhaps except for our fans. But no, it was a great opportunity to develop strong friendships, and ones that last to these days. You know, I mean, we're out now coming up on 30 years, and you know, when I think of who my close friends are, you know, they're all rugby players. They're all people, you know, from Fairfield U. You know, you can call them at any hour of the day or night, and if you needed help or you know, whatever, they'd be there for you. And you pick up exactly where you left off. You know, everybody, you know, I think in our class and in the years before and after kind of feel the same that way. Well, one of the things that was true in the 3 years that I was associated with the club is at the beginning of each season, both fall and spring, we would have a team meeting, generally in a classroom somewhere on campus, or I remember one time in the nursing auditorium. And you know, we'd go through the laundry list of typical things, you know, introduce who the president and the treasurer and other officers were, the captains of the team, the schedule for practice, the schedule for what our matches were going to be. And generally at the conclusion of that part of the meeting, Pid would get up, and he would then give his history of the club, and he would share with all of the players, the current ones and as well as the new ones who were joining us, you know, what he thought were the important hallmarks of a Fairfield rugby player, and how it differed perhaps than you know, different sports either on campus or elsewhere, and also different activities. You know, there was a strong emphasis on attitude, that you were to come and to be a benefit to your teammates, and in order to do that, you had to attend, you had to practice, you had to better yourself for not only your own sake, but for the sake of the people who played with you. And then, you know, of course, you know, he would go and he would explain the history of the club here on campus, how originally the team played on Grauert Field, which I believe is just down in the practice football field now, down below where the playhouse was.
Well, it's actually the site.
The girls' field hockey?
No, the site of the business building.
Oh,
is
right,
that what it
right.
was?
That's
Okay.
right. That's where it was. Right.
Underneath that is Grauert Field.
Okay,
Right.
okay, all right. And then how it moved, you know, in I guess 1969 to its current position along North Benson Road, when the Grauert family donated the funds to build the field in memory of their son Hans. And I thought that was kind of important, because everybody who joined the team every single year, again, whether it was fall or spring, were always getting that same consistent message. So, I think that that was an important tradition. The awards at the end of the year, I think, were an important tradition. Some of those will be part of the commemorative journal that celebrates our 50 years here on campus. And then also the selections. I thought that was a great thing. I mean, to have a student-run organization where, even when you had the moderator present, the moderator would not vote. It was not his position to actually decide who was playing. His contribution was to occasionally remind us of those things that were important to Fairfield rugby over its history. I think those are the things that I'll remember, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a moderator, Pitt, I think he served in several functions, at least from my own point of view. One was that he was a very approachable adult. And, when you're 18, 19 years old, to have somebody who will talk to you, take you seriously, and actually value your opinion, that's kind of a special thing. But, as a moderator, I guess he probably fulfilled the definition. He did moderate. He did act as a ballast for changes either too far to the right or too far to the left. Occasionally we would stray a little bit from our path. Maybe our behavior got a little bit out of control, even for us. And he would bring it to our attention. He says, is this where you want to go with your life? He wouldn't say you can't do that, or you have to do this. He would just say, is that where you want to go, and does that represent the best you? In selections, he certainly was the voice of reason and the voice of tradition. If there was ever a point or a moment where perhaps a selection was being influenced by who was your best friend or other things other than the attitude, the ability, and the attendance, he would bring that up. Again, he wouldn't force the decision one way or the other, but he would make you defend your point. I think that was kind of important, to have somebody who was asking you at times what were the tough questions. But he was a likable guy, and I noticed that a lot of our classmates really enjoyed being with him and wanted to emulate him. He had a number of interesting habits. One was his dietary habit. He would eat the darndest things, and one of them were the famous liverwurst and onion sandwich, and I couldn't even imagine eating something like that. But after a while being with him, I started to eat liverwurst and onion sandwiches, and really started to like that. I remember one night we were out. It was I guess it was a Saturday night. We were out and we had a game the following day, and he says, "I'll tell you what, I'll pick you up at your townhouse." So I was living in the townhouse the senior year, and I'll take you down to the game. I said, "Okay, that's great." So I got up early in the morning, checked the clock. He said, "Oh, I got plenty of time before the game." I went down to Gold's Delicatessen, got myself a big, foot-long liverwurst and onion mustard and a side of macaroni salad. Came back to the townhouse, and I was just sitting down, ready to dive into it, when all of a sudden there's a knock on the door, and who is it but Pitt? I'm like, "Pitt, why are you here so early?" He goes, "Oh," I said, "Don't you know, yesterday we changed the clock back." He said, "We got to be down to the field in about 5 minutes." I'm like, okay. So I went in, got changed, got ready for the game. By the time I came back out, the liverwurst and onion sandwich was gone, and he was polishing off the last of the macaroni salad. He was a great guy. He never apologized, never explained where it went, and there was no sense asking. We just went down to the game and had another great day at Grauert Field and another enjoyable party afterwards. But again, he was a great guy who he really just was a good role model, because he wouldn't force you to do something. He wouldn't insist that you do something. The only thing that he would insist on is that you thought about your decisions. And to me, to this day, I think he was a great influence on me.
Good.
When with Pat mentioning Grauert Field, I took great pride in the fact that I was a member of the rugby team, and to me, it was probably the most important thing that I was a member. And I took great pride in the fact that we had a dedicated field solely for rugby, and it was, as told to me, one of the few, if only, legit rugby fields on the East Coast.
It was the first.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. It was the first. And, to me, you talk about what's important to you as being a member of the Fairfield Rugby Club. That was it. To have that field solely for rugby, as I was driving by years after I was out, and I got somewhat defensive to see football equipment, football sleds, and the field being used for other reasons other than rugby. And I thought to myself, geez, I thought it was solely for rugby. I mean, how did we come about to have other athletics being played on our field? And I'm not really sure how that happened. But I did have a guttural response that, hey, that's not allowed. So hopefully, they took action to correct that and not allow that to happen.
Well, I guess when I first started playing rugby, I assumed that it had always been. And it was fully developed by the time I started in sophomore year. And I just assumed that it was going to continue forever. So in a way, I'm not surprised that we've lasted for 50 years. But I guess some of the things that have come to mind through this process of preparing for it is the huge emotional attachment that people have to Fairfield Rugby. And it wasn't just a 1980s thing. It's not just a 70s or a 90s or an aughts or even a 60s thing. It's something that permeates the entire organization from start to finish. And I think that's got to say something about the virtue of the game and what it brings out from each of the players. I think it really develops a great sense of camaraderie, a great sense of loyalty, a great sense of being willing to contribute everything you have. So I think it's fitting that the club has it's thrived for 50 years. And those things that were important when I played and when Mark played are just as important now. They were important before, and they will continue, I'm sure, for another 50 years. I have no doubt, as long as this university is around, that the club will be around.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Pat that the names have changed over the years, but the character and essence of the ball player, of the athlete, of the man and woman now who play on the rugby team transcends year to year and decade after decade. So I just take great pride in the fact that I was a member of Fairfield Rugby, and to see that it's lasted this long and will continue. I'm just honored to have played and happy to be a part of it, and I know that it will thrive and continue. I mean, my message to the current ball players at Fairfield U on the men and women's rugby team is to stick to attendance, attitude, and ability, and try not to incorporate hazing and initiation rituals or concerns. Look to pick your fellow teammate up, your fellow classmate up, and take pride in the fact that you are a member of the rugby team, because there's only a few of us who have dared to play or were crazy enough to play.
I would just encourage the current players and our future players to enjoy themselves. It is a wonderful experience. It truly is. My only regret was I didn't play freshman year. Actually, my two regrets is that I didn't stay back so I can play a few more years. But no, I would encourage them to enjoy the opportunity, because it is a unique one. I would encourage them to continue to lead the club, to organize the club themselves. Don't give that up. Don't allow another organization or another institution to come in and take over what is really your special opportunity to show yourselves as leaders and as contributors to a very rich tradition. You know, again, I would say, you know, enjoy it, give it your all, and when you get to be our age, you'll really look back and say, I'm glad I did that. You want to say why you didn't pass to me in St. Anselm's? Why I ran 100 yards down behind you?
No, I did a pop kick and I fell on the ball in a try. Everybody on the team was amazed that I actually could do that. I was surprised myself. But I don't know how many other nursing majors were rugby players on the men's team. Now there may be nurses on the women's team, but I was one of the few, and proud to be.